Okay, John Foley,
Present.
Douglas Bernizer,
Present.
Kat Pence will not be here, I believe,
Okay.
and Colonel Edgecombe will also not be here. Christopher Brookholder,
Present.
Mike Morrow,
Present.
Arnold Verstoif, who is also excused, I believe.
All right, so we have just enough for a quorum, I believe, so we can continue on as normal. All right, has everyone had a chance? And the first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Has anybody had a chance to review it? Oh, hey, Kat.
Kat Pence has just arrived.
All right. All right.
Okay, I'll give you some.
Well, Kat, are you there? Can you say hi for us?
Hello, finally connected. Sorry about that.
Awesome.
With you.
All right, well, cool. Well, you didn't miss much. So we were going to, has everybody received and reviewed the agenda? And
Yes.
any additions or revisions needed to that? I wasn't here, so thank you again, Doug, for running the meeting last time.
It's the last time I'll do that for you, but okay.
All right, well, since there doesn't seem to be any additions needed, could I ask someone to move? All in favor of approving the agenda as distributed, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, resounding approval of that. Okay, on the next item, the approval of the minutes. Has everyone received and reviewed the minutes from the March 20th meeting? And are there any corrections needed to those minutes?
Can you hear me, John? If you can hear me, just raise your hand.
No, I can hear you.
Oh, good. Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay.
It is still recording. It
Okay.
is still connected to the live broadcast.
Okay,
So I think
great.
if we continue on from the approval of the agenda going on to the minutes, we should.
All right,
be
that's
on
it.
track.
And Kat, I saw you reconnected too. Are you back with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
Perfect.
great.
Okay,
Great.
so did everyone receive and review the minutes from the March 20th meeting? And were there
Yes.
any corrections needed to those? All right, if not, could I ask someone to move to approve the minutes as distributed?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor of approving the minutes from the March 20th meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, we'll move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Again, we're limiting participation to board members and government staff. So did we receive any comments from the public before the meeting?
We did not.
Okay, well, we can move right on to the next agenda item, which are the reports. Do we have a tower chief report?
I have a written tower chief report. Rob passed his 10-hour duty time at 4:30 this afternoon, so he's not able to attend. So I will just read verbatim, and as always, I'm happy to take any notes or questions back to Rob. What he sent me is January through April traffic counts year to date, 12,847. It didn't indicate if that was plus or minus this time from last year, so I'd have to go check that. His mandatory occurrence reports, reminder, alert 1 is an aircraft having minor difficulties, alert 2, aircraft that's having major difficulties or has declared an emergency, and alert 3 indicates aircraft has crashed on or off the airport, or there is a high probability of a crash. There are 3, April 15th, a Robinson 22 requested taxi for departure. Ground control verified they had information hotel, aircraft taxied to runway 34 at hotel via Charlie, crossed the hold line at 34 and hotel without clearance. April 23rd, Cessna 150 out of Twin Oaks Airport reported a rough running engine 7 miles south of Salem Airport. Student solo pilot. Get that. Yeah. He was cleared to land, so he diverted to Salem, cleared to land runway 34. Our phone 6 was notified. It was an alert 1. The pilot reported having difficulty keeping the engine RPMs up, lost engine power, but was able to restart the engine. At that point, it was elevated to an alert 2, landed without incident, and phone 16 met the pilot on the ramp. The feedback I got after that was that he went to the flight deck and was going to go ahead and have food and drink until his instructor and the FAA showed up. Right? So, having been a student pilot before, I can't imagine how
Oh
unsettling.
my God.
Change of clothing.
Yeah. Thankfully landed safely, so good piloting. March 16th, equipment malfunction. So airport operations actually phoned the tower for an aircraft that called us on a cell phone. It was a Cessna 182 based here at Salem, Blue Sky pilots. And they had lost radio transmission. So their intentions were to land at Salem, which is where they also departed from. They broke squelch on frequency. Local control transmitted if this is the aircraft that is having communications difficulty, break squelch twice, so it did. Local control transmitted asking if the aircraft was south of the field, break squelch twice, so it did. And then they cleared the aircraft to land runway 34. Broke squelch twice to acknowledge that I heard that. They were then given a steady green landing light, landed without incident, and a green flashing light to taxi to parking. So we actually got to use the communications light gun, which is actually pretty rare. So
Is
another
all
one,
that pretty standard protocol then?
that's standard
and all
protocol,
that?
but yeah, like
It's not a standard event.
pretty much standard, yeah. But thankfully, we had the ability to make contact, via cell phone, so we were able to let the tower know that somebody's trying to get hold of them.
So when you say break twice, I'm just curious, like, do they?
Just click the
Oh, they
microphone
click the
twice. so
mic,
that-
okay, I was thinking,
You hear
okay,
it.
I'm thinking taillights on the car, how are you seeing their taillights?
So you just hear a double click, it's just acknowledging that you understand.
And then if it was a no, they, I guess if you can't, if they can't hear you, then they don't
Can't
get
hear
any
you.
click.
Yeah. And then the last bit is just tower equipment. So they're upgrading the DC power bus in the tower. So power distribution is, I guess, currently shared by multiple components. And so they're breaking some of those up. And a new fire suppression system is being pushed to July 2024. And a new HVAC system also in July 2024. So they're upgrading the existing tower before they build a new one. We don't have a new tower build date yet. We still only know that it's sometime between 2026 and 2030. So we've been given,
Not for that long.
yeah, haven't been given any official build time from the FAA yet. So that was it for the tower report.
All right.
So any
Thank you.
questions, I can take that to Rob.
Any questions for the tower chief? Go ahead, Doug.
There's a question that came up from SOG, and I know you can answer it, and I couldn't, and that is the tower does not keep track of which runway people are on.
Correct.
That information is generated somehow.
The FAA collects that data. I imagine probably through ADS-B transmissions and whatever mechanisms exist out there. But the tower doesn't track which runway, how many aircraft landed.
I would be really surprised if the FAA is counting how many touch and goes we had on 1634.
They do, they actually provided us that data, we're including it in the master plan. So they actually know what percent of all the aircraft that operated this airport were on one of the 4 runways.
Got it.
They don't publish that information, they will tell you what the numbers are, but they won't give you the data to share. It's for privacy purposes and things like that. They know the tail numbers and they know the times of days and all of that, but they will just give you the operations numbers that you need, but not the actual data itself.
Okay, thank you. Big brother.
Yep.
You can get your own data though.
You can buy your own data.
Yeah.
But then some of that is obviously been scrubbed for, taking on military operations and things that aren't, for one reason or another, aren't recorded. Whereas I guess FAA has the ability to track things the rest of us can't. So that's as far as my understanding goes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
You said
Counselor.
4,
I'm sorry.
Brett, you said 4?
Well, each runway has 2 ends, so depending on.
Oh, okay,
windows.
okay, I was gonna say, where did the other 2 go?
One of the 4 directions, yeah, technically it's 4 runways. It's like 2 runways, but 2 directions on each end.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so. And as I recall, just kind of looking back to my memory banks, it's been about 6 months ago they gave us that data. We're at about 70% of the aircraft use runway 34. Because
That doesn't surprise me.
predominantly north winds in the summertime, which is when most of the flying is, instead of from winds and six, back and forth, so. That's the highest percent for sure.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, so moving on, I guess everybody probably had a chance to read the airport manager's report that was included in the agenda. Any questions for John on that report? There was a lot of information in there.
Some of it was left over from the previous meeting just because some of the status has not changed, but I want to make sure that we're not losing track of projects. So if I mention them once, I don't want you to forget in a couple of months that we're still working on it. So some of it's redundant. There's a lot there, a lot to unpack. So happy to add anything or clarify anything anybody has.
I have one or two questions, I guess. So I was noticing you included all the employment, deployment info from Avelo in the report, which is kind of cool. It looks like we're averaging about 3,400 a month, at least since the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Is that keeping Avelo happy?
It is for the time being. So they just started the Sonoma County, Santa Rosa flights last week, May 3rd. So a week ago Friday. Those are a little bit lighter, but they expected that to start. They're expecting that will grow over the summer, but the existing Burbank and Las Vegas flights are still very, very well populated. As I understand it, the Burbank flights are closer to like 90+% load factors. The Las Vegas flights are in the 70% load factor, meaning fullness of the aircraft. But they've also adjusted the Las Vegas time now where it doesn't depart so early in the morning. Las Vegas time, it departs late morning and gets here early afternoon, and so they expect that to grow as well as it's just getting more into travel season. So they're expecting Las Vegas will grow, Sonoma will grow, and Burbank's already been strong. So as a reminder, they're adding the third Burbank flight starting June 17th, I think it is, on Tuesday. So it'll be 3 flights a week to Burbank.
Any other efforts to open other airports?
Other routes.
Yeah, maybe from Avelo or other airlines.
Not that we know of.
Phoenix.
Yeah. Phoenix is the one everybody asks about, and we share that with Avelo regularly, as well as the one other air carrier that we've continued to have conversations with. They recognize that Phoenix and other LA markets are probably the top 2 destinations. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I think the soonest would be fall, maybe next spring before we saw any other either additional routes or additional air carriers. But yeah. So.
Kind of related question, that maybe this isn't the right venue or time, but do we have any insights into, those are pretty good load factors. So are those predominantly folks around here, or are we getting a draw from farther in the valley? Or?
It's a great question. I came up yesterday too on a separate meeting, but we don't have the exact numbers yet. We will be able to get those as time goes on. Anecdotally, we're seeing about 50-50. So as people get off the plane or get on the plane, we kind of get a sense for who's from here and who's not. But it'll be interesting to see the visitation numbers. That's really what we want to see, is kind of how many people are coming here to visit, and how much marketing do you do in those markets and those sorts of things. So now that we're in May, I think that gives us at least 6 months worth of data to pull from. And I think probably by the end of the summer, we'll have more robust data on those actual, those numbers. So when we get those, we'll report those as well, start populating some of that in the reports going forward.
Thanks.
I think SOG last month, what was his name that was leading it?
Oh, Ron Peters.
Ron Peters was mentioning that they were getting people as far as Vancouver, coming down just with the ease of parking and the ease of airport flow. They would rather come here or
The ease of parking.
Yeah, got a lot of good feedback, so it's.
We actually like it if it was a little more crowded in the parking.
That it's easy to
Yeah,
park, right?
yeah.
They'll come from Vancouver.
The downside of the revenue perspective is it's so convenient if you live locally just to be dropped off and picked up, so that part doesn't help us financially.
I shall be flying out in like next week or something, and 10 days or something, and we will park here.
There we go.
Had a consultant visit last week, they came for half a day and they paid their $10. I said, you didn't have to do that. They said, we're just contributing, which one help.
Good. All right. Any other questions for John on the airport manager's report? All right, well, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have a couple action items this evening to consider. So the first one is the airport rules and regulations update. John distributed a draft to everybody, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. I don't know who provided feedback. I know I did. I guess, did everybody get a chance to review that draft?
Yes.
And were there any questions or things we wanted to discuss here for it?
They just received Arnold's, he had a few comments just in his email before this meeting, just 3 or 4 minor ones, but.
And the focus seemed to be on the requirements for the TSA, so like.
Security,
There's not.
That was the biggest push, was right, having to update section 8, which was the security requirements. They're obviously more robust now, and they need to line up with what's in our security plan. And so that
We
was,
just have to trust Aaron on that, because
you don't get to see the security plan.
That's
You
right.
get to follow the rules and regulations.
Right.
But we went ahead and made some other minor changes too, because they hadn't been looked at in 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
So.
I know I had some open comments that that you were waiting to hear from Aaron on. I hadn't seen anything back on those. I guess, I don't know that they need to be addressed now or even ever. But I guess if there were changes that got made, we would see them when it went to the public. Okay.
Right. And Aaron's online here tonight. Aaron, did you respond to John's security? I think you had a couple of security questions.
Yeah, I saw the comments come in, and we will respond to those, and they'll get incorporated into the next draft that comes out. So yeah, they were really good comments. One regarding escort procedures, and a lot of what you see in that security section is reflected almost word for word in our security program. So it's kind of the public-facing version of our security program. So really good questions, really good comments, and I'll get those incorporated and we'll send them back out.
All right. Anything else? I think Doug, I'm going to ask if you would help. I think what staff is seeking is that AAC recommendation that they can move forward with the administrative rulemaking process.
I make that motion.
Okay, so I think the official motion would be to move to recommend that the airport manager move forward with the administrative rulemaking process to formally adopt Rule 110-30 presented to the AAC for this meeting.
Correct.
So
And-
can we discuss that a little bit? Just a
Absolutely.
quick question.
With a second, so after,
Oh, yeah.
then you can have.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay.
Now go ahead. We have discussion before we do it.
I just want to make sure I understand. So this isn't us saying good to go. This is go forward with the process, which involves a bunch of public comment and other.
Right.
Correct. So there's opportunity for additional inputs, whether from here or from the public. Okay, correct.
Right.
And then part of that process then is a staff report and information report to the council that this rule has been updated. They can call it up on the council floor if they want to talk about it or write it around. So there's the public piece, which is it's a minimum of 15-day posting, so anybody can read it. We have electronic versions. We'll also have hard copies available at the library and the city recorder's office. And then once that comment period is up, depending if there are any changes, then we'll take the staff report to council, and then at that point, the rule is it's the same rule. It's just an updated rule now.
Right.
So, yeah, you are correct. So that's all you're doing tonight is recommending that we move forward with.
Given the changes to and I thought you'd mentioned 30 days somewhere, maybe I misread that, but given the changes to especially the TSA and the impact that might have on folks and the stakeholders, is that enough time, you think? Or these folks are even engaged enough? Because I know we've been talking to many of them.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the law says that it has to be a minimum 15-day
Okay.
period. It certainly can be longer. If we want to do that, we can do it for 30 days. We can do it for 45 days. There really isn't a push there. I would think, and I guess I defer to Aaron, but I think the folks that will be most impacted by it are already aware because they've come in and
That's
gotten
what I
security
figured,
measures. So
yeah.
there's nothing new in there or anything that would be controversial or something they hadn't heard before.
Right.
But certainly if if the recommendation is that we should publish it for 30 days, that's fine too. There's not really a big push other than just to get it done.
Mhm.
So,
Okay, Councilor Nishioka, is that you've probably got more experience than anybody here about these things. Is this,
As far as what.
what's a
comes in.
normal comment period for that?
Yeah, usually it's fairly short. Public comment, like the announcement gets made and it's fairly short. We're even, now, in fact, I was just gonna ask you, is this gonna be under information report or will it be a presentation? Or an action item?
No, rulemaking is an information.
Information report.
It's an information report, so we don't have to vote on it.
Correct.
We
You can
don't,
call it up if you wanted
Right.
to.
we could call it up.
Motion can be made to call it.
And we're already talking about all the things we can't call up anymore. But that's all land use. So I think this would be not in land use, it would, because it's at the airport. So, and most likely, unless somebody had wanted to just promote the airport, when I say somebody, I mean a counselor, or wanted to ask questions, they would not call it up. It would just be through as an information report. Because it's not something that we would vote on, so we would just see it and so someone might want to call it up mainly to highlight it.
Mhm.
Just to talk about the airport and so I'm not exactly sure if it's just gonna be about the security, or if it's about the overall airport. If it's about the overall airport, somebody would know.
Yeah, the rules and regulations are the day-to-day operation of the
Yeah,
airport.
so
the do's and
that might
don'ts.
not feel like something that needs to be brought forward to question unless there was something in the rules of somebody thought, oh, I want to ask about that. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yeah,
Would be more-
and I would think it probably wouldn't, because it is mostly
Yeah,
related to that security section, I would say.
so usually
95%
call-ups would be if there's a concern or we want to highlight. Does that help answer what you were asking?
Yeah, mostly I was just trying to see if
If
15 days was enough or 30 days. I think that's where. I'm looking.
30 days, I think, is what oftentimes is given for any appeals and things like that, so probably it's sort of a standard time.
30 days is a pretty common
Thanks, Mark.
time period.
Thanks for piping in.
I guess the city can figure out what's appropriate there,
Yeah.
unless we have a particular opinion one way or the other.
I'll stand by my second, as per the motion, which is to give you go ahead, the green light to go forward with the protocol.
Any other discussion on this action item?
I have a quick
Go ahead.
discussion about implementation in support of it. But that might not necessarily be the best time, so I can save it or we can talk about it now, it's up to you.
Is it relevant to whether you would vote to approve it or not?
I don't know
I mean, if you have a question that would affect your vote, I think, yeah, we want to discuss it now.
Sure,
The video has paused and it is frozen. So I would ask you to pause for a moment until we can get it up and going.
I'll wait till Jody acknowledges that she can hear us. Kat, Aaron, can you hear us again?
Hey, you're back.
Yep, we dropped off again and popped back on, so it's probably those solar flares. I don't know.
Well, let's blame it on the solar.
That's what I'm gonna say. Jody, can you hear us again?
I can hear you loud and clear. I cannot see you. So if we
Oh.
wait just a moment,
Okay.
there we go.
Okay.
You're,
I just did it. Back.
there it is.
We're back? Okay.
We're good to go.
So
Thank
Chris
you.
Chris had a question, Aaron. This is gonna be a question I'm gonna punt to you, so.
Aaron, my question, I think you've already heard it, the last talk we were discussing about how someone was unable to stick with a gate that malfunctioned. And some of the fallout from that, but my question is, what is our infrastructure and how are we creating a solution for when in the middle of the night, off hours, when something malfunctions? What's the support for that type of incident?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of avenues that we're taking to address something like that. The TSA was not very happy about it, to say the least. So they don't want to see it happen again just as much as we don't want it to happen again. We are putting in infrastructure for access control to the gates, which will give us the ability in the future to add cameras to each one of those gates. So that's an option. If a gate is stuck open, we can put eyes on it through a camera and ensure that nobody enters the airfield unattended. That's probably down the road a little bit. That's future state, right? But the infrastructure is going in that will allow us to do that. Immediate future is procedures with 911 dispatch and public works dispatch, because in that situation, the individual called the 911 dispatch center, and they routed the call up to TSA, which came back to me. So it was a little bit of a tricky situation. By the time we got word of it, it was several minutes since it occurred, and the gate was long unattended by then. So working with our partners in the 24-hour communication centers, being Public Works and Willamette Valley, to give us some type of a response, or whether it's a police officer in the area that can swing by to help out, or and a better ETA from our operations folks. Hey, we're 10 minutes out or a half hour out, giving some level of feedback for the tenants that they aren't just left hanging with, someone will be there eventually. That's going to be kind of our low hanging fruit right now, while we work on the technology side of it.
So we have established that liaison expectation with law enforcement or someone to make a timely appearance.
We're in the process of writing that up, and then we'll meet with them and kind of propose what we're thinking. I'm not sure how well all of that will be received yet, but we're writing kind of like a cheat sheet or a run card type thing for the communication centers that would give them more information on what to do if somebody calls in with that scenario. And that's we're
not even call TSA.
Yeah, yes,
That's step one.
and that's specifically for off hours. So outside of business hours, weekends, during business hours, we can respond within minutes, and that has been more the case than not, where someone will call us and we're there within minutes. So
the good news with that particular incident was that it was the first one that happened, so we learned, we iron out the wrinkles and fill the gaps, and so far it's been the only other one, as we're going through and upgrading the gates with the new access controls. Some are getting one of the oldest gate, W8 here next to FedEx. It's going to get completely realigned and rebuilt. So the technology is better. So and the other thing that we're doing is we're actually going to mark on the ground. Now that the weather's gotten nice, we're going to mark on the ground where the loops are, because oftentimes what happens is people pull through and they wait for the gate to close, but the part of their vehicle is still sitting on the loop, and so it defaults to an open position, and that's part of the reason it got stuck. And people don't know that. They think the gate actually defaulted, but really it was we need their vehicle to clear the painted marking, but you can't find the markings on most of these gates. So there's some of that kind of short-term stuff that we think will solve that too. But they're pretty few and far between. And so it wasn't a great situation that it happened, and it did impact the tenant, which is unfortunate. But it also helped us understand how to correct the process and do it better. Great question.
Thanks, Aaron.
Any other question or discussion on the motion before we go ahead and vote on it? Kat, do you have anything online?
Nope.
All right. Well, we have a motion and a second, so let's go ahead and vote. All in favor of the motion as proposed, say aye.
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 All opposed? Oh, I said aye, sorry. Count yourself. All opposed? All right, that motion is passed unanimously. All right, so the second item on the agenda, there have been, it's airport renaming resolution. I will introduce it, but I would hope other folks might chime in. So there have been a number of stakeholders, to include the Fly Salem Committee, Travel Salem, Chamber of Commerce, and local wineries. I've kind of requested that the city change the name of the airport from what it's currently named, Salem Municipal Airport, to the Salem-Willamette Valley Airport. The airfield itself will retain the existing name of McNairy Field. And the name change is part of a rebranding effort. I think that we'd like to emphasize the Salem Airport's importance to the greater Willamette Valley, not just the city of Salem. So that's the background. Is there anything I've missed there? Any other things folks wanted to add to that?
Covers it.
All right. Doug, I'm gonna okay on you again.
So it's proposed that the airport name be changed to the Salem-Willamette Valley Airport, retain McNairy Field and the designator SLE. I'd like to propose that we send our support that motion.
Right, we'll recommend to city council that they adopt a resolution to change the name.
Right.
Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Is any discussion on the proposal? Go ahead.
I'm just kind of curious, and this is coming from recent experience with nonprofits and other things, when you say a rebranding effort. Do we have any idea what that's going to cost?
We're working on that now. The renaming portion, there's not really a cost associated with that. It's mostly staff time. The rebranding, we are going to peel out probably, I think we're looking at probably $20,000 just so that we can get a consultant on board, figure out what level of effort needs to be done externally versus what we can do internally with our desktop publishing folks. So when we talk about logos and colors and signage and what all that's going to look like, we want to have some expertise in that area so that we're doing it well, doing it in a way that the community in the larger Willamette Valley would like to see it. So in my discussions with other airports, probably the most comparable to us is Klamath Falls, and it cost them about $25,000 completely. They did most of it in-house. A couple of other airports I talked to that were larger, that had a much heavier lift, theirs was closer to $100,000. So $25,000 to $100,000 is a pretty good range, but I think we're going to be at the lower end of that. Most of that cost, I think, really will be consulting fees, and then when we get to signage, when we start putting up monument signs, we've got two now. They're small, old wooden signs. We do monument signs, and we put signs up on the former Hertz building when we move our offices over there. That'll be a pretty good expense, but some of that can come out of airport operating funds in the future. So it's a long way of saying we don't really know, but we think it's probably somewhere between, I would say, 20 to 40,000 total. If I'm just taking a swag at it at this point.
We have some savings from the terminal renovation.
Thanks.
So we can put that towards the rebranding.
And regulatory wise, there's no impact or just
No.
government paperwork or?
It's paperwork. Yeah, it's a lot of paperwork. So all of our regulatory documents and things will have to be pages that reference the old name would be changed, and those get submitted and approved. It's just a lot of staff time. We'll change it in the airport's master record, but because the designator SLE is not changing, the FAA really doesn't allow you to do that unless you're closing or opening the airport. It's just a lot of paperwork really at that point.
They update that stuff every 90 days anyway, so
Yeah.
it's happening.
So for the purposes of the community and their desire to market it differently, once the council approves this motion on June 10th, or approves the request on June 10th, then at that point it's official for all intents and purposes. The federal stuff is just paperwork, and whenever that becomes official, you wouldn't know anyway.
That, not your number of core kind of jives with other experiences I've had, not with airports, but in schools and animal shelters, similar kind of thing, 20 to 50.
Okay.
Everyone ends up running.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Any other discussion on the proposed motion? Kat, I'll ask, since you're online, if you have anything to add.
No, I think it's awesome.
All
Just
right.
needed a name change for a while.
Okay, well, let's go ahead and do a vote on this. All in favor of the motion as proposed, say aye.
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 And I take that as unanimous, but any nays? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the action items, so we can move on to items for commission discussion, and I think I've got a couple things I want to bring up here. The first of which is, I guess it's the most recent Salem Airport Users Group I was not there personally, but I was informed from people who were there. There was some discussion on a presentation given by a company that provides automated landing and parking fees. So as I understand it, there's no concrete proposal to enact any sort of fees at this point. But since it was getting a little bit of discussion amongst the airport users, I was wondering if I can ask you, John, as airport manager, if you could provide the broad strokes of what that is, mostly to prevent any kind of rumor mill from getting spun up. So
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's always helpful. And because I don't get the user group meetings regularly as I used to, it's good to know what's being talked about. We were contacted by a company called Vector. I think it's Vector Aviation Solutions. They provide a whole bunch of different business lines, but they have dozens of airports across the country that they've contracted with to provide automated landing fee and aircraft parking fee services. And so they use the technology that exists today to track what aircraft actually used your airport, whether it was touch and goes or whether they paid to park. And so they provided us a presentation, and it was interesting to look through. I know airports that are doing this. There are some in Oregon too. And, following council's direction to keep expenses down and generate revenue so that we can get out from under the general fund as soon as possible, we're looking at all potential revenue sources. This is one that a lot of airports have moved to. It provides a significant increase in revenue because we can capture landings from aircraft that otherwise we don't have the ability to. Right now in Salem, we only collect landing fees from commercial operators. Velo Airlines has a waiver, but when their waiver is up, their 2-year waiver is up, they'll pay. And then there's Empire that flies for FedEx, and there's Ameriflight that flies for UPS, and that's it. So it's a very small number. We don't collect any landing fees from general aviation or business jets or any other users. And airports, our size especially, are looking for ways to generate revenue, and this is one of them. Now you can put your program together any way that you want, and so you can exclude locally based tenants, you can exclude flight schools, you can have aircraft that maybe they're 12,500 pounds and over, or you can have just business jets, or structure however you want. They put those sideboards into the system, and then they actually do the billing on behalf of the airport. So it's no cost to you. It's just straight revenue, and they do it all behind the scenes. And so we sat through a presentation. It was very interesting. It's really tough to determine what the potential revenue is because we don't know what our sideboards would be. I would certainly not advocate for charging local tenants. They pay for the use of the airport through their ground leases. But we all know that there are aircraft that use all of our airports across the United States, and they don't buy fuel, they don't eat at the restaurant, they do touch and goes, they use your airport, and they don't pay for it. And so there are airports that are moving towards this. Where we're at now is that, well, with the other 20-something projects we're working on, we're reaching out to airports that are currently using this system with this company just to see what their experience is, what their program looks like, what exclusions they made, what their revenue generation looks like. And at some point, I would suppose that we'll have a discussion internally about whether we can proceed with that. It will take a council action, which means the AAC will see it ahead of time, because it will be a program change and it will implement fees that we don't currently have in our master fee schedule. And so I don't imagine that we would probably midsummer before we could even take a look back at this program again, because there's so many other things going on. But that's kind of the highlight of it all, is a presentation that we were provided and something that we have under consideration just to try and meet the council's goal of generating as much revenue as possible. And it sort of ties with the discussion about the runway and how many people use the runway and how active that runway is and how important it is to folks. But it is a straight maintenance cost now. There's no revenue derived from that runway. So if this is a way to collect some revenue and put that towards runway maintenance and restriping, then I think that's a healthy discussion to have too. So no decisions have been made. Council will have to make that decision for us. And that's, I don't know anything else.
That's perfectly said. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Are there any questions for John regarding that? I mean, there's no action here. If something comes up, it will be in a future meeting.
So I actually do have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I could probably wait for it. So John, you said that they would do the billing and then they submit payment to you, but for their services, they're going to take a cut or a percentage of.
Right.
And then, but you, the airport, can put on the guardrails. They don't have you say, well, you have to do this, and
That's
you have to charge this.
Right.
So
We explained
you
to
have
them.
the control, they do all of the work, and if somebody's not paying, they are the ones that also are responsible for getting it.
Right, they do the collections, and they have an over 99% collection rate, so this is not an unusual circumstance across the country. Now, a lot of
Yeah.
airports have gone to this, so they were a pretty good success.
Surprised it's not.
Yeah.
Cause just I know some of these end numbers are tied to like private third-party ownerships just to register them. So you might have a hard time finding who actually owns the airplane.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, the other neat thing about it, and it's off of the revenue generation side of it, which is important to us, is that it also will provide us with data that we don't collect today. So the question keeps coming up, like how many aircraft use which runway? Well, we don't track that. The tower doesn't log that. They just log number of takeoffs and landings. They just click the clicker and they report that. So we'll actually be able to know how many aircraft use each of our 4 runways, what type, how many are winds, how many are business jets. So, there's a lot of data that we can collect, and we can aggregate that and do it in a lot of different ways. Who's here at night,
Yeah.
right? We don't count tower operations or aircraft operations after the tower closes at 9
Oh,
p.m.
yeah.
So we don't know what the night operations are. If there's a noise complaint at night and the tower's closed, we have no idea who that is today. We can now track who was in the airspace or who landed at the airport at 2 a.m. if they buzz somebody's house. And so I think there's a lot of other benefits to it that we can use to do better business and make better decisions with data that exists out there today. And so these companies really do all that for airports, which is great. They've got experts in-house. And again, I want to talk to Astoria. Redmond's getting ready to onboard this summer. Boeing Field, where Aaron came from, they use this system. And so it was a great presentation. It was very eye-opening, very interesting. It's a program change, it's a policy change. And so we have to take that to city council.
Is that because they have cameras, or what, how do they collect that? How do they know who's landing?
I can't speak intelligently to the technology, but any more aircraft have ADSB outputs.
Oh, okay.
and things
So
like
it's not-
that.
You might buy that information.
Yeah, you can
Buy information.
I
You can
see.
buy it from FAA, you can use your own system to collect that information. So,
Yeah, if I had nothing better to do on an airplane, I could keep track of that. ADSB is great for that.
yeah, it's not very expensive to put in an ADSB receiver.
And,
At an airport and just collect that data on your own.
But it sounds great.
Yeah.
I know.
And then
Yes.
In the many years that I've been here, the question has come up, and the city's policy up until recently has been, because there are so many airports in the valley, we're competing with a lot of airports. Some parts of the country, you're the only airport for 200 miles. And so you've got a captive audience, but here we've got a lot of airports you can go do touch and goes at. Some don't have towers, some do. And so we wanted to keep the costs and the fees as low as possible. Plus, we didn't really have the ability to track and bill. It's a more than a full-time job. So the technology's advanced far enough where that part of it has been solved. And I think because there are so many airports now that are going to this, we're not going to be anti-competitive by charging fees that other airports don't. We may be in the short term, but I think as I'm talking to other airport managers and these systems are rolling out and people are, airports are seeing the benefits and capturing revenue, potentially even into the 6 figures, which is a lot for this airport when we're, $500,000 or more into the general fund. It's a significant number. So it won't surprise me. And airports are expensive to maintain. So it won't surprise me to see a lot of airports move to this as other competing airports do as well.
Another thing that we have that two things we have that most of the ones you were comparing us to don't have is instrument back course and the tower. And I know that a lot of instructors send their people up here to get familiar with that sort of thing. And I think you talked about a weight limit. I mean, we could exclude, but FedEx has their planes down here all the time, shooting missed approach and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of activity that we're not capturing. And I think, one of the other things that people forget that we have that costs the city money is we have an on-site fire department. Not all airports do. And so a lot of business jets use the Salem airport because their op specs or their insurance requires that they go to a towered airport or an airport with an on-site fire department. At some point, airports like Eugene, Medford, they are in a position now, they've grown to a point where they can buy back a lot of their city services, so they can pay for the police and pay for the fire that serve the airport. We want to get to that place one day. our goal is not to just get out from under the general fund, it's to generate enough revenue that we can be self-sufficient and buy back some of the services and support the city that way. So, so any revenue opportunity and having a fire department here that does respond to these occurrences, you know, had one of these aircraft crashed and then there've been fatalities, you know, there's a cost to providing those services that we're not collecting from anybody. So there's an argument to be made there too, that, you know, the city's paying additional services for the airport that they're not collecting.
Yeah, I just want to, one thing that caught my attention there is when talking about the user data. So I think that would be important to make sure either we would have access to that, or presumably there's probably some way they'll sell that to you where, you know, they take a little bit higher percentage, but they give you the data. Whatever it is, I think at least initially to have those insights that we currently kind of have sporadically, but not a comprehensive view. And subsequently do something with that information, you know, make decisions or.
Yeah, as I understand it, Mark and Aaron sat through the presentation, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I understand it, it's actually, so the data and information is available to us. There's actually a dashboard for our airport and it will show all of the activity real time, and we can go back historically and collect all of that. So it won't cost us any, it's part of the service they provide. And so there's that piece of it as well. And yeah, there's a lot.
I mean, that can end up being as valuable as just
Right.
the straight out of fees.
I agree. Yep. Yeah, we've thought about it, but
Marketing.
perhaps a dozen different ways that we can market to folks and drive more business to the airport by knowing.
And potential either expansions of existing carriers or new carriers that we want to see those.
The other part for us too is the parking piece of it. So landing fees are one thing, but the FBO manages the parking now, and there's kind of a, you know, sort of a disconnect between who parks on the airport's ramp but doesn't use the FBO services. And there's really, if they don't take fuel, they get a ramp fee, but that goes to the FBO for servicing the aircraft, but we don't receive revenue. I mean, we don't have the ability to track that. We don't know who's parking down there all day long.
You're talking about aircraft. Right?
Aircraft parking, right, aircraft parking. And so,
Flight deck burger surcharge.
I'm sorry.
Flight deck burger surcharge, isn't it?
Like that. It's just, you know, one of the great things about the aviation system in the United States, you know, the grant money we take and all that is it's all a user-based system. It's generated through ticket taxes and cargo taxes and all the different ways that the federal government collects fees and puts the dollars back into infrastructure improvements at the airport. And so being in a user-based system is really kind of a nice, you know, you don't really feel bad about charging people that are using your airport. Now, local tenants are already in their contracts with the city, their ground leases have, you know, right of use of the facilities. And so they're paying every day to be here, every year that they have a long-term lease. But in this valley, there's a lot of, as you know, as you mentioned, there's back course approaches and, you know, other things at the Salem Airport and ILS, you know, that you don't have at a lot of airports. And so there's a lot of activity that happens here that we're not taking advantage of. That all of that costs money to maintain. Anyway, that's kind of where we are with that. It's just a presentation. It's something we're considering along with other revenue opportunities. So we'll come forward with that at an appropriate time and revisit that.
Mhm. Any other discussion on that topic?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I want to get it out there so
Okay.
people don't think we're trying to saddle everybody with new fees or anything.
All right. So the other item I wanted to follow up with is, you know, 2 meetings ago, we voted on a letter to send to city council requesting a third-party review of the Meaden Hut runway 1634 analysis. As you know, that has not been delivered to the city council. A lot of that got tied up with the master plan update being put on hold. I think there's enough uncertainty with what we're going forward with commercial airline activity, terminal area improvements and other things. I think John's felt like if we were to put that forth to the city council, it would just be confusing. We ought to wait. And even since then, I think, well, you had talked to Doug and I to make sure that was okay. And I thought that was a fine idea. I think the other thing that's come up is I think we probably are going to look for a more general recommendation to city council. So maybe at the next meeting, we might revisit that letter and suggest that, hey, as we're looking at the Meaden Hut runway 1634 memo, we actually look at more than just the estimated cost, but there may be other things that come into that related to commercial air service and things like that. So it might be a slightly different letter that we come back and resend it, but I just wanted to follow up that there was a reason why it hasn't gone to the city council and that we still want to recommend that same goal. Go ahead.
Oh,
Councilor.
I think Mark has.
Oh,
Just some breaking news. In one of our meetings today, the Public Works Director gave me the go-ahead to schedule a work session with the City Council this fall on primarily the future of the secondary runway. I get the numbers mixed up, you'll excuse me.
I do too.
Yeah, I didn't know there was four.
I didn't know
I
there
do
was
that, I do that, but I keep, but because there's four numbers, I get them all mixed up. The future of the secondary runway, and the master plan, like a master plan update in general, but council work sessions get scheduled out way in advance, and if you don't jump on it now, you don't get one, so we will be working to schedule a work session in the fall. So you might, as you think about that, think about the timing of your letter.
okay, would it be better to have that
Yes.
in your hands when you go to that work session?
I would have it submitted before the work session,
Okay,
then we can just tell the council, we've scheduled a work session to address this.
Yeah, I think by then, I mean, my hope is that by the July AAC meeting, we'll have some direction from the FAA on whether we need to continue to pause, because part of it is they're collecting commercial air service data as well to support what we're showing as aviation forecasting into the future. It doesn't match up with the past, of course, because there was not commercial air service. Right. So they really want to see some reality before they send it off to headquarters. So that's part of the pause. The growth, potential growth of the terminal campus is that if it pushes east and it gets up against taxiway alpha and safety areas and things out there, that impacts the other runway. So there's more than just the cost of maintaining the runway long term. So we really want what we take to council in a work session, and how we sort of direct the remaining portions of the master plan. We want it to be sort of to be all encompassing. If that makes sense. So I think in the July meeting, we'll have a little bit more direction from FAA by them and what their comfort level is with restarting the master plan. And we can revisit that letter that we're going to submit to council. And then at that point, Councilor Nishioka is wonderfully engaged here. So she won't be confused as to why there's a letter coming before a decision is made, but she'll be able to kind of give us thoughts. My worry was that if we sent this letter out and then there was nothing to tie it to, it's just going to confuse council as to why we're being asked to review something they haven't seen yet.
You said broaden the scope as we get more.
Yeah, my recommendation would be that we ask an independent firm to look at the entirety of the impacts of the second runway and see if they concur or not with the findings from our consultant.
And John, you know that I was trying to be encouraging in the sense of getting things to us so that we could push forward in the legislative committee. And you're there, and so you know that there's opportunities.
Right.
And so that's what I was working towards, is I want to see if we can get federal and state support.
mhm.
And so having all of the ducks in a row,
The timing work for that if it was in the fall then?
I think so, because they're not gonna come back, but they won't start till January.
Okay,
And so I think and if we have that information, and it sounds like if people are already thinking ahead, that September would be able to lead us into, how we want to present something with our lobbyists.
okay.
Yeah, and it could be as early as late September or as late as sometime in November before the council work session. It just depends on how.
Yeah, still
Busy
before
the documents.
January, and Courtney would be able to start working up what is needed with John's support, so.
A lot of competing priorities with the council, but now we're past budget season.
Well, we're
Figured
past,
out.
we're past budget season, we're not past revenue task force.
Right.
Actually, it's now completely in the council's lap, the
Yes.
budget.
Yeah.
Yes.
The budget committee season is over.
There you go. Our portion. So great. Yeah, I think that's.
Any other discussion on that point? Any other things that we need to discuss before we adjourn? I feel like we've come to the end.
I have one quick question. I know I can't ask this outside of the meeting, so. Long ago, I heard talk of a project for electrification, so electric vehicle and electric airplane. Just wondering, has that kind of gone by the wayside? Is that company still around?
They're still around.
That company is still around, and they paused a lot of their growth because they were way out in front of themselves, putting with their charging stations at airports up and down the West Coast before they had aircraft certified by the FAA. So I don't know what the status is of their certification of their aircraft, but electric aircraft growth is still a thing. But more broadly, we're actually at the final stages of a solar feasibility study at the airport as part of the master plan. The Salem Climate Action Committee gave us $50,000 to do a solar feasibility study. So to look at what potential property would be good for solar farms that wouldn't impact either pilot or air traffic control operations. Is there enough power to make the airport, carbon neutral, i.e. power, via solar? Is there enough power to be gained to have a microgrid? So that power loss, we could take care of ourselves for a period of time, and then possibly even to sell some of the power back to PGE. They have a mandate to have 20% of their power be renewable resources. And so all of that study is almost complete now. It's very highly technical. You might be interested in it. My eyes glaze over when I read all that stuff with kilowatts and volts and different things, but should be coming back here, I would say, by the end of this month or sometime in June.
Right.
And then at that point, we'll look at, again, highest and best use of the properties. Does the city want to take a portion of its available property and turn that into a solar farm? Is there enough benefit there? Is the payback period, make sense and all of that? And then on the airport itself, you see this in Medford and some other airports where they take their parking lots and they turn into covered parking, and the covers are actually solar panels. And so there's potential there for some of that, as well as we continue to grow here at the terminal. Obviously, if we build a new terminal, we want to build in some solar and some, some renewable energy in an upgraded terminal. Or a new terminal.
It would be required.
It would be required, yeah. So it hasn't died. It's kind of taken a different course. It'll probably look different than what we anticipated, because I think the aircraft certification side of it is much slower. With the FAA processes to certify aircraft and figuring out how to fight battery fires and things that fire departments really aren't used to having yet.
So how about electric vehicle charging? I heard that was.
Yeah, I would just.
That would be part of that. Yeah. So we would. But at the flight deck, our plan was to do aircraft on one side of the fence and then vehicle on the other side of the fence. But we also want to look at
the vehicle charging probably would move ahead a lot sooner than the aircraft.
Right. I mean, that actually could be a source of revenue.
Yeah.
If you have the capital, once you have the capital installed, you can charge much higher than what you're paying for the power.
Yep.
In fact, we probably need to think about getting some electric vehicle charging spaces identified in the current lots.
Yes, that's what I was just gonna ask.
Do that. So
I'm happy to
I mean,
chat on that if you want. I consulted with some folks on the resorts and on the coast for clean research.
Actually at the former Hertz building this afternoon for all other reason, and I looked at that back roof that slopes towards the east, and it's a beautiful blue roof that slopes towards the east, and I thought it would just be a perfect spot for solar panels to power that part of the airport. And so I think there's a lot of potential there for solar and then electrical charging capacity here and over on the other side as we just grow that out.
Yeah, I mean, the only comparison I have airport wise is Portland is PX, and they do have charging, and it's at a fairly low rate. So in other words, the vehicle might take a few days if you were really low and a really large capacity, but it is free. So it doesn't have to be though. You can charge. I mean, you can even have it open for anybody as long as they're willing to pay the parking fees down for $10 a day.
Yes. Well, I know there are some facilities where, they have different rate structures. So if you want to supercharge, you're going to pay more, but you can be able to charge in an hour or less.
Yeah, and I don't do supercharge.
I mean, right now, since you can't return the same day or even the next day currently, you could go with a level 1 or level 2 charger.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You don't need a level 3 charger. So
sit there.
Yeah, I can't use the level 2s in Portland because I would be full before I return. If they had level 1s, I'd be all over that. I pay for it.
And we did talk about that as we were doing the terminal improvements thing. There was so much we had to get done in advance of just getting an airline in here that we really didn't get a chance to get further on that. But I think that, as we're getting some of these other projects wrapped up, and the solar study will be part of that. Talk about where that makes sense. And
we might be able to get a microgrid designation too, which I know our new public works building is part of a microgrid. So there's a lot of potential there, but we may have to move ahead on the just the EV parking charging just ahead of everything else.
Thanks for thinking about that, because I think that would be good.
Yeah, and then there's actually going to be a portion. So the rest of my thought there on the aviation side was that in our master plan, we want to look at not only electric aircraft locations, but also EV toll. aircraft. So, as we're getting aircraft that are more, just for the purposes of discussion, more drone
I
oriented.
think you'll see those before you see the electric
More
airplane.
VTOL, right? So you don't need a mile long runway for one of those. Do we have pads with charging capabilities, but they operate more like helicopters? And so airports now are having to start thinking about property for those types of facilities that don't currently exist at airports with fixed wing air. So
This is all extremely exciting.
it's very exciting.
It's so exciting.
What's interesting, I remember as a kid, the vertical takeoff landing stuff was really a lot of talk in the 70s, and it just sort of went by the wayside, and here we are now 40, 50 years later talking about it again, and it's becoming a reality more so. Urban air mobility is good talk.
Well, so I'll close out by kind of, I think I'm getting the vibe over here as well, that EV charging is here now. You don't have to wait for solar or studies, and it's here now. You can contract with companies and you can make revenue off that space in addition to the parking revenue.
Yeah, the city has a contract with Blink
Yeah.
already, and so it's a funding issue. We have to front the purchase of the chargers
Yeah,
and
that's the capital.
the installation, and we have to make sure we have the electrical capacity. But it wouldn't, if all those ducks were in a row, it wouldn't take long at all to get some EV spaces designated here at the airport.
I'd be using one right now if you had it.
Good. About this, I'm glad you all do.
All right.
Good stuff.
Any other thing to discuss?
Anyone online? Kat, Aaron?
John, this became project number 25.
Probably should populate a square in the out years.
Yeah.
You just gotta keep adding stuff to do, don't you?
You don't want to ever get bored.
The great thing about to-do lists is a lot of satisfaction in checking them off.
Oh, there's so much satisfaction.
We haven't put a matrix together, we're so busy. Got 25 different projects on it that we're trying.
We had to put them to 5 different columns, security, operations,
Crazy.
terminals.
Isn't it
Have a
too?
cake party.
Who wants to-
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of our agenda, so I think we can go ahead and adjourn. Thanks, everybody, for your time this evening, and we'll look forward to seeing you in 2 months.
That's good. Thank you.
Thanks so
See you
much.
all
Have a
soon.
good night.
Thanks,
Take care.
Kat. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, Jody.